It looks like we are set up and we are live with our Zoom feed going straight to Facebook. Um, this is unfortunately our third and last leg of the 9 cheese tour through the Farmstead Cheese Company. Cheeses that were paired with Shadybrook Estate wines. I'm Rudy Zuidema, and I'm the winemaker here at Shadybrook Estate. We're coming to you live from our beautiful tasting patio in sunny and warm Napa Valley. We are very thankful that we are open for business and able to safely and healthily serve some delicious wines and enjoy a little bit of the Napa Valley lifestyle that we are so appreciative of here. I can't tell you enough how happy it is to be working with the Farmstead Cheese Company. We have a special guest today, actually two very special guests, but one very unique opportunity. We are with Lynn from an owner partner of the Farmstead Cheese Company and her amazing cheese maker. Welcome, and thank you guys for coming.
Hey Rudy, thanks for having us again.
Of course.
Yeah, excited for this last and final one. Oh, we're gonna have to keep making cheese. No, that's okay. We'll keep making cheese. We'll keep going.
Make more cheese. We'll keep making wine. You keep making cheese. We'll be good.
We'll make some. Yeah. We'll make some more stuff. So we'll have more opportunities to keep on seeing each other.
Yeah.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, Lynn, why don't you tell us again a little bit more for some of our new viewers today, a little bit about Farmstead Cheese and your amazing family and how you got going, and then we'll get right into working with our pairings. But feel free, if you need a little bit of the Estate 5 to get going while we're learning, feel free to pour some wine, everybody.
Yeah, I know. That's the hardest part is when people start to talk and everybody's dying to jump in a little bit. So my name's Lynn Stray. Giacomini is my maiden name. That's our family farm. We are Reyes Farmstead, and we're located an hour north of San Francisco out on the coast. Right on Highway 1, and we are exactly about an hour and 15 minutes directly west from Shadybrook. So we've got completely different climate out here, and what West Marin in Marin County is known for is agriculture. My family's been in the dairy business for 3 generations, and it wasn't until 20 years ago that we decided to put milk in the vat and make cheese with our milk. My parents have been on this property since 1959. So we just celebrated last year our 60th anniversary on this farm. Yay. And my sisters and I, yes, there are 4 girls in the family, no boys, exactly what every dairyman dreams of. We all grew up here on the farm, moved away, had our careers and families, and moved back in 2000 to start the creamery. And as I mentioned, putting milk into cheese was the second edition of our family story. And so we can carry on this family legacy in the dairy business and really continue to support the dairy business around us as well. So in 2000, we started making Original Blue, which is what we're known for. That's our flagship that you can find if we have some viewers from around the country here that might know us from our milk can logo, and it's Point Reyes Original Blue. That's all we made for the first 10 years, and we've enjoyed that on previous tastings with Shadybrook. We do not have a blue today, which is going to be the next part of my story, and I'll introduce Kuba and how he created all these new cheeses to add to our line. But in 2010, 2009, Kuba came to us. So we, as I mentioned, the first 9 years, all we made was blue cheese. And our cheesemaker at that time, he had retired, and we were looking for a new cheesemaker. And so I called around to try to find some cheesemakers for us. And we were having a difficult time. It actually took a while. I don't know if it is like that in the wine business, but to get somebody that's got some experience and that really fits and matches, our culture here and wanting to move out to Point Reyes, which is pretty rural. So I called up the old cheesemaker from Cowgirl Creamery, Fons Smith. I'm going to give a little shout out to Fons. He had moved on from Cowgirl at that time and was in Indianapolis. And I said, "Are you ready to come back to California?" And he said, "No, vested here in this program here, but I've got somebody you should meet. His name's Kuba Hemmerling, and he is a fantastic cheesemaker, and he's from Poland. And I said, oh, okay. So called up Kuba, and 11 years later, he's sitting here with me today and has helped grow our business dramatically and has created some fabulous cheeses you're going to try today. So I want to introduce you to Kuba, and why don't you talk a little bit about your background, how you became a cheesemaker.
Okay, so welcome everybody. I came to States 15, 16 years ago almost right now, and I was kind of talking to my coworker today, saying that I still have the suitcase I came to United States here to remind me of where I came from, where I brought all my belongings in one suitcase, couple $100, you know, it just reminds me of, you know, where I came from, where I am right now. So I studied food technology in Poland, and I signed up for an internship program with Ohio State University to gain some experience in the dairy industry. And I was working, I mentioned, with Von Smits, who was a former Cowgirls cheesemaker, and he really introduced me into making cheese. At the time we were working for the company who was making a variety of different products, yogurts, milks, ice cream, butter, and cheese. And cheese was really one of those products which I actually enjoyed the most because of the uniqueness of it, of difficulty of it, as well as how many different style cheeses you can make just by combining different cultures and by manipulating the curd to make it different from the other styles. So and that's why you guys were able to taste 6 out of our 9 cheeses so far, I believe, right? So and all it takes is just the milk, and you can see how many different varietals you can get. So like Lynn mentioned, I've been here for 11 years right now, and it's been busy. And you know, I always like to tell the story about me arriving from Midwest and meeting Lynn for the first time, and she would sat down in the office with me, and she would be like, okay, so you need to start working on new cheese, like Gorgonzola Dolce and this and that. I'm like thinking, oh, I haven't made a blue cheese in my life yet. And she's already asking for like Gorgonzola Dolce. So anyway, this is kind of like our ongoing joke. I always keep reminding her that she was the one to make new cheeses. So, and it took, you know, when I came on board, it took a few months, probably 8, before we established the original blue recipe. And then we dove into to making different styles of cheeses. And I'm sure Lynn mentioned, you guys, when you guys tasted Toma was the first introduction of the new cheese to our product line, just to match somewhat a versatility of the product as blue cheese, but for those who don't like blue cheese. So Toma really fitted well, and that's what actually last year made us kind of think about what else can we do with Toma, and one of those ideas were that we can make flavors. So we've introduced 3 flavors, which we guys tasted 2 out of 3.
Right, the Toma Provence and the Toma Truffle.
Yeah.
I'm gonna try the 3rd one today.
So, but in the meantime too, you know, there was other R&D project going on, and which I think the longest R&D project which we've had in our kind of back pocket was the Gouda. The first batch was made in 2010, but we didn't release any till like 2016.
Well, released it. Yeah, we ate a lot ourselves for those years. That
true.
was a 2-year age. So we're going to try that one. And then
I must say that in our industries, we probably have the most fun R&D meetings and programs, right?
yes, exactly.
You know, and the funny thing is too that I'm like one of the most impatient people. So
next to me.
Yeah. And, you know, with R&D, it takes so much time, and it takes a lot of patience to, you know, you want to have those results right away, and you collect those data points, and you're like, okay, this is going to work. This is going to work. And then you come down 3 months down the road, like, no, that's a flop. So start from the beginning. So anyway, so R&D can be challenging, but it's definitely fun. It keeps you motivated to achieve certain goals, and yeah, it's very interesting.
One of the goals.
I have so many questions for you guys. I can't wait to dive more into the nuts and bolts of cheese making and geek out a little bit. But I want to give everyone a quick opportunity to get a little bit of cheese and food and wine into their mouth, so we can speak with a full glass instead of 3 empty ones. So if that's okay with you, let's just do a quick little intro on the Shadybrook Estate 5 and the Gouda. We'll kind of dive into those a little bit, and then, like I said, I've got some really, I cannot wait to ask you guys some
Talk
questions.
and eat and drink at the same time. Cheers.
So our first wine today is the 2016 Shadybrook Estate 5-block selection. So all of the wines that we are going to try today are specifically from the Shadybrook Estate vineyard. We have 3 ranches that we work with. The original was the Shadybrook Estate property. We then added the Wrap Ranch property and Alco Ranch property, which is a little bit north of here. We use all 3 of those ranches in our Wrap line and some other wines, but all of the wines that you try, all the red wines you try from Shadybrook Estate are 100% from our premier vineyard, which is a beautiful kind of southwest facing slope in the rolling hills of Coombsville with fantastic soil, lots of minerality, it's an old volcanic area, so there's lots of metals. The soil is healthy, but it requires a lot of replenishment and kind of re-inoculation with microbes to kind of keep all the soil alive and the root system is very happy. But the sort of kind of struggle that we always have there and what we're always trying to get to keep living is exactly why those vines work so hard. And when they're working so hard, they're producing a little bit less fruit, smaller little berries, but with incredible concentration and really exciting kind of power behind it. And that's why we are so excited to be here in Coombsville producing these wines. In general, Coombsville kind of has an old world sort of feel to it because of our location to the San Pablo Bay, much cooler climates than Up Valley. So in my mind, it is definitely one of the most expressive and exciting regions of Napa Valley. So this Shadybrook Estate 5 does have indeed 5 different Bordeaux varieties in it. They're all planted on the Shadybrook Estate property. This one is mostly Cabernet Sauvignon, so it's kind of a traditional sort of left bank style blend, driven with Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, and Petit Verdot. So some really nice contrast between pretty and a little bit rough and gruff in the Petit Verdot, and then just accented with some beautiful Malbec and again Cabernet Franc to really liven up and lift the aromatics. So for me, actually, this is probably one of the more difficult wines to make because it can be any percentage of any of those varieties. It's different every year. We're going to try a Malbec and Cabernet later on. Those sort of have to fit a little bit more into a box and really scream Malbec and Cabernet. But this blend being able to just need to have an excitement and some wow factor in it, but can come from any of those grapes is not only the most challenging, but the most fulfilling once we do come up with some success like this one. And it needed to sort of have some nice big girth to go along with your fabulous Gouda cheese. It's so good. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about the Gouda and let everybody get a little sip of the Estate 5 of the 5-block selection and some Gouda in them, and then we'll keep digging.
I know the wine is excellent.
Yeah, it's excellent wine. Like you said, it's just got, because of your 5 varietals in there, it definitely has that, all these different layers of character, and it just continues on. And I think that's why it's going to stand up really well to the Gouda. The Gouda, as Kuba had mentioned, when Kuba first came, we said we need to make our second cheese needs to be a non-blue for all those non-blue lovers out there, since that's all we were making. And you experimented with an Alpine style, a Gouda, a farmhouse style, which ended up being our Toma. And our Gouda was really something we loved right away. However, we wanted to make a traditional Gouda, so the aging time was much longer. Our Toma is aged 3 months, and the Gouda is initially was 24 months.
Yeah.
So.
And well, the interesting thing about the Gouda too, it was kind of a one of those experiment you make and you forget about it, and then 6 to 8 months down the road, you're like, what was this? And then you take a sample of it and you're like, oh my God, this is like caramel, it's like sweet. It's got a nice butterscotch color, it's got a nice complexity, and it's very like fills your mouth with like a lot of flavors. And so that's where we kind of decided that we'll continue to make on a small scale as it takes quite a bit of space and time, but we are in process of gearing up that production up as well, so we'll make it definitely more available than it was
It's
before.
been available just as part of our library of cheeses, so it's available either online or at the farm. We do have a culinary center here, and kind of like Shadybrook, we were kind of cut short here back in March and had to close down. But when we open up again, we do have tours and tastings, and we're going to do our winemaker dinner. That's what we're going to do, Rudy. That's our next one, as soon as everybody can open up again. But why don't you talk about, as people are enjoying the cheese, how do you make a traditional Dutch Gouda style cheese?
So, I mean, it's kind of like with winemaking, there's few principal rules you have to follow in order to be able to call certain things, certain products, varietals of wine or cheese. So in this case, I was able to find a script from one of the Dutch dairy schools, which had a recipe for a farmhouse Dutch style Gouda. And like I said, we used similar cultures, but I always like to play with cultures because cultures are very interesting microbes, which allows you to bring up different flavors at different times of the year. So like one interesting thing with one of the cultures in Gouda, for instance, is that it doesn't contribute to a flavor for the first 8 to 10 months. And then after that, that's when you really start getting those nutty flavors, and that sweetness really gets nice and strong. And before that, the cheese actually has a little bit more acidity to it. So it's interesting how this cheese evolves as the time progresses and loses its moisture, and the flavors are concentrating. It's kind of like you already said about the grapes. You have smaller berry, but a lot of flavors. This the same principle here is that we're able to pull the moisture out throughout that 24 to 18 months period and really concentrate the flavors into the cheese.
Concentrated. It's so intense, but so creamy and so rich all at the same time. That little hazelnut or that sort of like creme brulee almost kind of sweetness that it has is just phenomenal.
And then you guys probably get to taste and you see on the paste of the cheese there are like white specks. Those are actually crystals of proteins of tyrosine, and that naturally occurs when the cheese loses moisture, and then all those tyrosine crystals just bind together, agglomerate, and create that nice little crunch, which makes for the really good mouthfeel.
Yeah. Okay, so one of the questions, one of the words I hear from you, or I'm hearing and sort of poked around a little bit, of course, is about your different cultures that you are adding to the cheeses for different flavors. So where do you find these cultures? Are they store-bought? Are they proprietary? Do you make them yourselves? Is it different proportions of them that you add to the milk to create different textures? Give us a little insight on how cultures are working.
So we don't make our own cultures. It is possible to do it. It's very time-consuming and very difficult to keep it clean and sanitary without possibly contaminating those cultures with microbes you don't want to have. So we generally buy all the cultures from supplier. Most of the suppliers actually comes from Europe, and a lot of times when I decide to, let's say we're gonna make new cheese, I always try to reach out to the suppliers from the country of origin where the cheese I'm trying to make in style, because that you can find they're gonna be able to help you with what works and what doesn't. So yeah, there's different variety of cultures. They work different way. There's cultures which work in the different temperature ranges. Some are mesophilic, which are on the lower side temperature between 70 and 95, and then there are thermophilic, which goes 100 and up to 135. So, and all those cultures will act differently. They will break down the cheese differently. They will control the pH, which in cheese making, controlling pH is the most important thing, in my opinion, as far as trying to developing the right textures.
Yes.
And with the textures, you'll have the flavors. If you develop too much acid, the cheese is gonna be very short and brittle, and it's gonna have a chalky taste. It's gonna be kind of bland. So finding the right pH ranges is important. So, and you do that all with the choice of your cultures plus the things you do in a vat. You might be, so like with Gouda, for instance, the size of the curd is probably a little bit bigger than a rice grain.
Rice kernel, yeah.
Rice kernel. Toma, for instance, is probably twice the size of the rice kernel. And then with the cheese, which is the newest, our newest cheese, Quinta, the size of the curd is actually the size of the hazelnut. So, and all those small little things will contribute to how much moisture we retain in the cheese, how fast it's gonna age, and whatnot. So there's a lot of small things you do to in order to develop the cheese, and the microbes are fascinating because there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them, and it's finding that right balance of cultures with the milk to make it work and make it a good product. That's the biggest secret in cheese making.
Well, and everybody's milk is different. Everybody's milk components that they get are different. Yeah. And if I didn't mention it earlier, we are a farmstead operation, which means that we use only our own source of milk here on the property. So we have a dairy. It's a cow dairy. These are all natural cow's milk cheeses. We raise Holsteins, and that milk goes straight into the vat, and it's literally about 50 yards away from the milking parlor to our creamery. And the cows are all raised on the property. We have our own mother stock, so we're not purchasing cows from an outside source. So everything is really contained and controlled so that we have a consistent product year round, similar to an estate grown vineyard. Yeah. And so that's one of the things that we really look for is our specific milk flavor really coming through into the cheese. And it's this bright, sweet milk flavor that I think that we taste in all of our cheeses. And that's really what distinguishes one cheesemaker or one cheese from, say, the one down the street, is because of what we're feeding our animals, their cow comfort, and then the milk components and what we're drawing out, or what the cheesemaker is really able to work with in the cheese vat.
I think it's also really similar to your guys' interest in grape regions. It's the region where we raise the cows and where you guys grow grapes. It have very huge impact on what the fruit gonna taste like, or what, in our case, what the cheese gonna taste like, and what the milk's gonna be. So I want to say that we are in Napa of milk supply. Yep. Because the climate is very mild. The milk components are not fluctuating a lot, so they are very stable. And the cow comfort it's important as well, because the cows never really get too hot. Right. We get 1 to 2 weeks of weather where it's over 100, and that's about it. So
yeah, and similar, we have a good friend that all they do is make Gouda in Wisconsin, and her cheeses are wonderful, but they taste completely different. And she's a farmstead as well, so it's about your milk components. Yeah. About how specifically, what pH level. And what's unique about this Gouda too, which I think is really stands on its own is usually when you get a cheese that's aged out, whether it's a cheddar or a Gouda. Those are two good examples that the older it gets, it can tend to dry out. And this particular Gouda that I love that Cuba makes is definitely still has a creamy mouthfeel to it for being this. How old is this one? Is this?
This is probably close to
18?
20 months actually.
Yeah.
We've recently been cutting some, and yeah, this is about 20 months right now. So so you do have, you know, if you look at the paste, the older it gets, also you will have more of those crystals. But with cheese too, it's people sometimes say, oh, the older the better. You know, not necessarily. Like we find it that 18 to 24 months is like the sweet spot for the Gouda. After that, it tends to sometimes may develop some like off flavors, just because it's continue to lose too much moisture, and then it's starting to turn a little bit. So, but it's kind of like with wine, you know,
Yeah, it's so ironic with wine. It's the same way. People say, "How long can I age it? How long? How long? How long?" And it really kind of depends on your personal opinion. There are sweet spots that I think are, you know, maybe 8 to 10 years. Some people like to age it sooner. Some people like to age it just in the brown bag that they bought it in, and it gets consumed that night. But it really is, you know, there are certain sweet spots for the wines, and it's a personal enjoyment and how you like to drink your wine.
Yeah.
I wanted to say, you know, Lynn, you had told us last time that make sure you get your cheeses up to temperature. So we were sure that we brought these out a couple of hours ago and they're room temperature, and I had always done it, but I loved you hearing it, that when you can smell the cheese before you eat it, I mean, the aromas that come off of that Gouda are absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
I don't know if I like smelling it more or eating it more. It is absolutely delightful.
Yeah. So for those of you out there, you know, we assume you're eating right now, but if you haven't, take a smell of it. It's just so, it's that butterscotch sweet smell. And it starts to actually, you start to salivate for it because your senses are all working. But, and then a lot's going on here because you have the sweetness, the aroma, and then you have the texture. Texture is a big part of enjoyment. And it actually, it really, the wine will coat your mouth. And that's another compliment because we always want two things to create a new experience. So let's try it with the wine and see what you think.
Oh, we have been doing it. It is fantastic. I'm very, very excited to move toward our very, very small production of Malbec and Cabernet Sauvignon again. But to kind of just keep talking about these same sort of recipes and ideas, and then see how they transform into your Toma and this Quinta. I cannot wait to hear about all the Quinta. But I love that pairing between the Gouda and the 5. That was absolutely fantastic. Big, you know, pungent, nutty creaminess, enough tannins, enough acid in the wine to go along with it. I love that pairing.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, so let's continue our discussion, but let's move on to our next wine and cheese pairing that we have today. We are now going to move on to our 2016 Malbec. This Malbec is a very, very small production for us. When I first came to Shadybrook Estate and was just making some different wines from the different Cabernet blocks, and was happy to know that there was a Malbec block, and I had never worked with Malbec before. We did a small experiment of picking some grapes throughout the vineyard to see what the flavor kind of personalities were, and I called the owners 18 hours after we crushed the Malbec, and I said, "Your Cabernets are very, very they're lovely. They're definitely can be world-class Cabernets, but this Malbec that I just made for the first time is over the moon. I mean, just the color, the depth, the flavor, and the lightness and the delicacy all at the same time." And she said, "Well, that's great. Well, you can use the Malbec to blend into the Cabernet and help improve the Cabernet." And I said, there is no way am I going to blend this into anything else. You are now not only in the Cabernet business, but you are also in the Malbec business, because this is so unique and so exceptional all on its own. So Malbec is typically used for blending. Of the 5 Bordeaux varieties, or the 5 main ones anyway, it's typically the most kind of delicate again and soft, and one of the more lovely, approachable sort of textures. The aromas are very different than Cabernet, Cabernet Franc, Merlot. There's a lot of spice, kind of Asian spice and intensity, but in such a beautiful, soft way. Which is, I think, why we decide to match this with the Tomarashi, because I think there's going to be some contrast that goes on that was absolutely lovely when we tried them together. So Malbec is also our smallest production wine. We have at the moment just a half of an acre planted, which we are hoping to get maybe 2 tons off of every year. So 100 cases, maybe 125 cases is all we'll make. We have planted a little bit more using the same clone and using the same soil profile. It's actually right next to this Malbec. So hopefully we'll grow up and be able to produce 200 cases, 250 cases of Malbec at one day or another. But the response to the wine and the repeat business and the rarity of the wine is so worth it. It's really, really fun. Much like your cheese. So
I have to say that the your blend is exceptional, but that Malbec really it's very nice, and the soft mouthfeel on it, and the tannins are really, you can taste them a little bit, but they're not overpowering. They're not making your mouth like tart, pucker. Yeah. So well done.
Thank you. Yeah, it's one of our, I think, most food-friendly wines, where there is the concentration of fruit, there is the weight and sort of intensity of the wine, but neither the acid or the tannins are so overwhelming that you have to be too cautious about how you match them up with food. I mean, anything from pasta cream dishes all the way to lamb shank, I mean, kind of can fill the board. If the food is in balance, this wine's going to be an absolute delight with it.
I feel like you mentioned that Malbecs are mostly like the blending wines, and I find it that sometimes those wine which supports other wines by themselves can be really good and enjoyable. Like, for instance, Cab Franc, it's one of those wines I think that can be like that as well. You normally blend it, but by itself, if it's well made, it can be really good wine as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. And yeah, I mean, I think in general the market, or at least the demographic for Malbec is small. People sort of think of it as a really inexpensive wine that comes from Argentina. It's kind of like the house wine, or the village wine, so to speak, but grown here in Coombsville, and fermented slow and cool and long, and really made to be refined. Little hints of good French oak. I mean, this is a serious wine. So we're very happy with the response we've had.
I love the fruit up front, and then it goes into exactly what you're talking about, is that spice. So it develops in your mouth with just a beautiful balance. As you know, I love this wine, and we picked up a bunch of it, Teddy and I, when we were up at your place last time, a couple weeks ago. And this is really kind of one of my favorites. When you talk about a cab as beautiful as a great cab is, and we're going to experience it with the Quinta, which I think is going to be really cool. This is kind of your everyday elevated wine. It's fantastic. So let's try it with the Tomarashi.
Yes.
So I don't know how many out there are repeats to our tasting sessions here, but you've tasted our Toma, which is the base cheese of the Tomarashi. It's called Toma. Toma in Italian means wheel of cheese. It's really just describing the format size of it. But in Italy, it's so common that it's really referenced as a farmer's cheese, a table cheese. There's no specific recipe for it. There's no standardization. So you'll see, if you see a Toma referenced out there, It could be different milk types. It can be different ages. It could be a soft cheese, a hard cheese. It just really represents really a farmstead cheese made by the farmer themselves. And so, as we like to say herself, as my sisters and I, that really Kuba's the one that does all the magic, and our team of cheesemakers. So actually, talk a little bit about how many cheesemakers you have, because people always think, okay, it's one person making the cheese, but you have an amazing team. It takes a lot of people from the beginning and then the aging process.
Yeah, it takes a village, for sure. I mean, we have 6 cheesemakers probably right now, 6 to 7. Since we have 2 plants right now, one is in Petaluma, one is still at the home ranch. So up here we only make original blue and Quinta, and Toma, Gouda, and Bay Blue are made in Petaluma. So yeah, it's besides the cheesemaker, you know, the majority of the labor you have, it's aging rooms, and you know, you have to turn the cheese, you have to wipe it, you have to wax it in our case with Toma and Gouda. So there is a lot of care to it. It's almost, you know, like having a baby. You know, you cannot just let it go and, you know, do its own thing. You have to make sure that it's okay and it's continue to develop. So luckily for us, we were able to, for the Toma line, and soon to be for the Gouda as well, we have a cheese turning and brushing robot. So in our aging room, our racks are 18 feet high. So there's 18 levels and they're 2 deep. So robot goes in the alley and basically picks every wheel, turns it, puts it back on a shelf, brush it. Anyway, so that used to be a job which we would have probably 4 to 5 people just doing this all day long. And by the time they finished turning all the cheese, they would go back to the beginning of the room and do it again. So It was really back-breaking job. People hated doing it. It's, you know, it all sounds fun for first 2 weeks, and after that it's just brutal.
You have to love cheese because you're caring for it. You're washing it, you're brushing it, you're looking at it, you're noticing different things about it. Toma is actually made he's comparing both Gouda and Toma, very similar because they're both made in the Dutch style as far as the process goes. But obviously Toma is only aged about 3 months, and it
doesn't really follow the 100% like the Gouda style. It's got little tweaks, which makes it a little bit more unique. And we're able to, talking about pHs, we're actually driving the pH a little lower, so it brings that little bright acidity, which comes through after you taste the buttery flavor, which I actually think that Malbec actually soften up that acidity and makes it nice and sweet.
This is an amazing combination.
For sure. It brings that sweet butter up front, and after that finishes with a little kick on of the Togarashi spice
in the Malbec actually pairs with the spice.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's talk about the herbs and spices that we put in and how we selected this, because we extended this line because Toma in itself is so buttery up front. It's got this nice acidity and balance that it lends itself really well to flavors added. And our intention was we want to make sure to have the cheese taste up front. We don't want to mask a really good quality cheese with herbs and spices. We want to have a nice balance and be able to taste the cheese and then have it blend into the spice.
Yeah, so you know, a lot of, like Lynn said, you know, you want to make sure that you still get to cheese the base. You know, a lot of other cheeses on the market, with flavors and spices, they might be kind of one-dimensional. You get to you have a texture, and then you have the overpowering spices, so you don't really taste the base. So for us, it was more to figure out the way how to make it more balanced. And you know, I'll just give you guys a little history of how we decided to make flavored cheeses. Was thanks to this lady here who said, you know, I have a customer, they want something new right now. I'm like,
what are we gonna do?
What are we gonna do? So anyway, so the simplest thing was, okay, we have a good cheese base, let's do flavors. And so we've gone through variety of flavors. We've gone as far south or west or whatever you call it to
Everything.
orange zest.
Orange zest, which orange blossom honey goes really well with Toma. But
anyway, so we've tried the traditional red chili flakes, whatnot, and so the Tomarashi, actually, we have to give credit to our executive director, Jennifer Lattrell, who happened to be my wife.
She's our chef, so if you come out, yeah.
And she actually suggested that we use that. So she gets full credit for that choice. The other one was Herbe de Provence, which I always loved the Herbe de Provence, and I was like, oh my God, that we have to make Herbe de Provence, and it actually did taste it pretty good.
Oh, it's wonderful, yeah.
So, but yet at the same time, you know, we were able to maintain the flavors of the base of the cheese. So you still get to taste Toma, but then the spices takes you on your different voyage.
Yeah. So we add the spices in the cheese making process when we have already cut the curds and it's in the vat. And so it's after we do like a pre-draw. So you still have whey in there, you've got the herbs in there. And then when we separate our curds and whey, that's how we get to just the curds going into the form that makes the cheese. As it's being washed in, I always like to talk about this because you might get one of our flavored cheeses and you might have more of a spice or an herb in one section because it's like all draining in and you're trying to put the curds in the forms really quick and work that before it goes into the press. And so what's great about being artisan is you can have, you know, different levels of that spice or herb going into the section of that cheese.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's all the first part of mixing herbs is it's mechanical, it's in a vat, but then once we transfer to pre-press tables where we creating the slabs of cheese, it needs to continue to be mixed. Otherwise the herbs continue to fall down to the bottom. So if you don't mix it properly, you have this thick crust of spices on the bottom. So so there are times where the section of the pre-press tables are not getting mixed properly, and you'll end up with like wheel, which is like completely full of spices and can be a little bit more overpowering. But that's kind of part of being artisanal and small production, is that, you know, it's made by hand, and there is a little bit of a variation from wheel to wheel sometimes.
So
you know, when you were talking about earlier, you were talking about finding a Gouda recipe, and you have a recipe for the herbes de Provence and a recipe for the Tomarashi and for the truffle. Those, you know, recipes, you know, in winemaking are a little bit more of a gray area. We're sort of kind of massaging things along, and as we sort of discover and find out how the wines are aging along in a couple of years, we might sort of tweak that recipe. I mean, there's never anything sort of written absolutely in black and white. Is that the case with cheese also, like depending on the milk that you get, or is it always just like, it's like I liken it to like cooking and baking. You know, when you're baking, a quarter teaspoon is a quarter teaspoon, not sort of a quarter teaspoon.
No.
So there's a little gray area in making cheese.
Yes. So so having that recipe doesn't mean that actually I followed it 100%. I followed the steps, but then, there, like you said, there is a lot of massaging. There is not just a little bit here or there. You go sometimes to extremes. I'm looking, you know, because like if with winemaking, with any type, whatever you cook right now or make, you can find recipe online everywhere. You know, you search, put in a Google, boom, there it is.
Yeah.
Now you have to take that content, and the way I'm usually taking it is as kind of as a guideline on what I plan to do, but then don't really sometimes agree with what the recipe says, because it might not work with the milk we have, and so and milk components. So we adjust as we go. So we'll make the first batch and then we do corrections. So no, even though that script from Netherlands, it's, you know, in my hands, it doesn't really mean that it's followed exactly the same way. So it's yeah, there is a lot of variation, and that's what makes your cheese more unique too. Is like you actually wanted to veer off of those standard recipes and do your tweaks to kind of put your own touch on the final product.
Mm-hmm. So I don't think, Rudy, we told anybody what tomarashi was. So tomarashi uses the togarashi spice. It's a Japanese 7-spice blend, chichimi. And it includes sesame seed, white seed, black seed, a sesame seed, hemp seed, nori, ginger, and the togarashi chili, which is from Japan. And we loved this spice blend because it had a lot of layers and depth of flavor to where you start to taste like a toasted sesame. And then it goes into this umami flavor because of the nori and the ginger. And then it goes into this, you know, this back end heat. So we wanted something that was really complex, but that had a nice long finish. And I think that's why it goes with this Malbec so well, because you've got the umami flavor and a little bit of the heat and the spice in this.
There is a little spice in that.
Fantastic. This is
I have to say though, as we've now, this is the fourth Toma that we've had here. I think it was just absolutely fantastic to start with the original and really understand what that pure Toma texture is, and creaminess and mouthfeel is, and that sort of nice crisp acidity and nuttiness that it has. And then once you guys, just like you had mentioned, Lynn, as you added these flavors along the way, nothing kind of got in the way of that true Toma. This was just a very light accent, or just sort of a fun differentiation on that same cheese. I mean, it's so well done and so balanced. It's why it's going so well with the wine, is everything is so nicely in balance. Great job, Kuba.
Same with the wine.
Same with the wine. Yeah. The wine really complements the cheese a lot too. So. Yeah, no, it's it almost like slightly mellows out that spiciness from the cheese, but brings, like you said, the spice from the wine.
It brings the heat back up at the very end. Yeah. It's lovely. Yeah.
And the acids, or the complementary acids between them too, just really streamline across the palate. That's really cool. I also was a little bit crazy, and I tried a little bit of the Malbec with the Gouda, and I tried a little bit of the Estate 5 with the Tomarashi. Very, very, very different. But again, everything is in balance. They brought out different flavors. They work differently. But it's nice to see that, you know, we're not sort of set in stone here. There's the balance here is able to kind of go across the table.
But it's amazing how different they taste.
Yes.
Each other, and how, you know, it's really fruity. Malbec brings, or maybe the Gouda brings out the fruitiness in the Malbec.
Absolutely.
With the Tomarashi, it brings out the spice. So.
Oh man, that's so great. I would love to pour some of this. I want to dive into this probably most amazing cheese I've ever had, and I've only had it twice. And it is just so mind-blowing, the concept and the texture and everything of this. I cannot wait to really dive into this, and I am so excited to be tasting this amazing creation with our sort of the king of our castle, the 2015 or 16 Estate Cabernet Sauvignon. This is our sort of pride and joy. We, like our children, we have to love them all. But Cabernet is definitely king in Napa Valley, and it's definitely king in our house. And so I am so excited to be pairing your newest project, the Quinta, with our Cabernet Sauvignon. So Cabernet was really how and why we started here at Shadybrook Estate. We have 6 acres of grapes growing on the Shadybrook. Actually, we have 13 acres of grapes growing there now. 9 of those are Cabernet, and they are a number of different clone and rootstock combinations. Rootstocks are what are growing down in the earth, and they're really meant to match your type of soil, whether it's heavy clay, loam, gravel, sand, rocks. We happen to have very, very rocky soil there. So we have a very aggressive rootstock, so it can really dig down and kind of work its way through all of those hard surfaces to find water, micronutrients, nutrition, all of that. And then the clone is what we graft on top, and that's what is above ground. We have a number of different clones out there. It's kind of like we're growing a whole bunch of different apples. We have Gravensteins, we have Granny Smith, we have Honeycrisp, we have Red Delicious, we have all those. They're all Cabernet Sauvignon, but they each have a little bit of a different characteristic, nuance, aromatic profile, tannin profile, acid profile, all of those. So we kind of get to create this really cool rack of ingredients within Cabernet Sauvignon, all from one property. Then you get some of the contours of our property. There are north-facing, south-facing, east-west. There are some slopes. There are some flats. There are low spots, high spots, and we pick and harvest all of those separately. We age them separately. They ferment separately, age separately. So even within those number of clone and rootstock combinations, we kind of keep splitting hairs and having as many different Cabernets as we can. So that when we get to produce our flagship wine, it can be 100% Cabernet, but it can be a blend of 12 different Cabernets. Some that bring aromas, some that are spicy, beautiful core fruit, some red, some blue fruit, some black fruit. Tannins can be some components that are very heavy in tannins, but they're fine. Some that are very light in tannins, but they're chunky. So we get a little bit of all of those textures and mouthfeels. So it really is fun to fabricate this 100% Cabernet Sauvignon, but through including and incorporating so many different little individual blocks of Cabernet. So that's what brings out the complexity. I think the length and the excitement that goes along with it, and certainly a reason to collect and see how this wine changes and ages over time. When we tried it last with this Quinta cheese, excuse me, it was absolutely incredible. Talking about making wine is similar to the others, but this is such a unique cheese, Kuba. I can't believe where and how you came up with this, and I cannot wait till you share that with all of our guests viewing today.
So,
it's been around for centuries.
It's been around for a while, yeah, certainly. I mean, it's originated in Europe, that style of cheese. It's was modeled by this French/Swiss cheese, which was made in the mountains during the winter time when the milk components were higher. So it's in style of Vacher and Mondor. And it's one of those things with cheese, is like, because you do little different things and you add different cultures, your textures are completely different. And with this particular cheese, the idea is to make the cheese paste very spoonable and soft. So in order for the cheese to hold its shape, we had to wrap it in a spruce bark. Otherwise, the cheese would become flat as a pancake. And by adding the bark, you actually, as the textures breaks down, the woodsy aromas of the bark penetrates the paste, and they come through and makes the flavor of, normally would be very simple flavored cheese, like without too many dimensions, because without the wood, but that wood really brings the complexity of that cheese. And
does it? Just especially if you taste the cheese in the middle and work your way out towards the sides, how you get even a little bit more intensity from that wood. So how are our viewers supposed to get into this cheese? I mean, I think you just start taking bites of it. You just stand in front of the fridge and just eat it. No. So yeah, please show us how to get into here.
You can demonstrate. There's two ways you could do it. I mean, it's really the serving size that it's meant to be is to share at a table, which we just love that. So
Why
it's
would
kind of a one and done.
Now be careful now with the COVID. You might want to be within your bubble.
Yeah. So we work together all the time. This is my work husband here. Yeah. Or just get your own. So those of you who have this cheese at home, this is brand new for us. We don't even have it really out on the market yet in retail stores. It's just, we were looking back today, you started making this and experimenting in 2016.
17, yeah, it was 17, and it started as an idea. I always knew that Lynn and her sisters, they always want to have like this soft, gooey cheese, and you know, it definitely was out of my wheelhouse at the time. It's probably one of the more challenging cheeses I've made, and it certainly took its time, you know, to figure it out, how to make it and how to make it right and to get the good texture every time you make it. So so we started 2017, I believe, or maybe even 16. You might be right. But then we dropped that project. We started making, you know, building the new facility in Petaluma. So then we put that on hold, and then really like last year, like early in January, I decided that okay, we're coming up for 20-year anniversary. Would be nice to maybe celebrate with the new products. I really dove into R&D and committing to figuring out the way how to do this. And it took me a few trials early on in January, February. I was like, gosh darn it, that's difficult. You know, you think you get there and then something comes up and it completely changes texture and flavor. And then like April, May, I think we started to get really good results and consistent results. And that's when we started fine tuning. And we, you know, even right now, we're still doing some additional fine tuning, but I think we are closer than farther. I think now it's more about fine tuning the packaging and all the aspects of how to deliver it to the customers. So it's still in great shape.
So it's great about this cheese, and you're going to show how we cut into it, because you can either cut it in half, but at this point, this ripe of a cheese, it's going to run out. That's why we put the spruce bark around it. You can think of this as considered a bloomy rind, soft ripened cheese. Similar, it'll go in the same category as like a brie. This is the French Swiss style, but they make it in Germany. They make it all over. There's a couple different renditions of this in the United States as well. But this category has grown so much, and it is a fragile cheese. But what we love about it is that you can have it at different ages, and it's kind of different cheeses. We had one yesterday where you could actually cut it in half. You don't want to eat the spruce bark around it, but you could cut it in half, and it was more like a brie. Yeah. It was a thicker paste. As it ages, it really starts to break down and develop, and those proteins and fat, and becomes more of a spoonable, creamy texture. And this one in particular is very soft, and you can feel it. So we take the top off. So you could go either way, but this way we just cut it, kind of score it in the middle, like Kuba just did, and then you take the top off, and then it becomes this. It's like a special secret package inside.
I was able to cut my lid.
Oh, you got your full lid off. Nice.
That's right. And this is a single serving cheese, Lynn. And
it is.
Yeah, it's certainly, you know, it's not very big. It's you know, 9-ish ounces.
Okay. So I'm gonna just kind of show everybody here.
So it's not really that hard to commit to it.
So how did you decide on spruce bark versus any other barks that are out there? And is the spruce bark treated at all? Is it smoked, or do you toast it? Because this cheese has been made for centuries right now, a spruce is the cambium of it is. So the way how you get to that bark is they strip the outside of the tree, and then they use the hardwood to carve it out, basically, and strip it. And spruce happens to be one of those trees which it's good to be stripped and easy to be stripped. So this is pretty much, I think, at least at this point, I don't know of any other commercially available spruce barks on the marketplace. So that's kind of what, you know,
it's pliable. So when you do treat it with basically you're heating it, and it becomes very pliable. It does lend some flavor. So if you taste it closer to the rind and to the interior side, you'll get that woodsy, earthy aroma and flavor. But it also doesn't have it doesn't have knots in it. That's the other thing about the spruce tree. So it's a very solid skin of that bark that acts as this together layer. So we also looked at putting it in a crock, and that didn't quite work.
Yeah, and again, at the end of the day, if we would just put in a crock, we would miss out on that flavors which you get out of the bark,
which is traditional style.
So yeah, so certainly is, you know, it's very it's not very strong cheese per se, but it's got enough complexity, and I think that what makes it very approachable and like you want to eat more and more is that smooth texture. The texture is just.
The texture is so amazing. I mean, this cheese is so unique again, and so unlike anything I have had before. It's a great pairing to go along with the Cabernet. As you said, it's a pretty mild cheese, but the complexity and the layers of flavors that are there are absolutely enough to go along with a big, hearty 100% cab. Now, Lynn, I know it took you a while to come up with a name for this. It was named a few different things along the way, but I loved so many of the cool little stories about how you came up with the name, and I'm sure our viewers will absolutely love that too. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yes. So first of all, we've been, like Kuba said, we had been making this, and whenever you do an R&D project, you love when you're already part of a farmer's market, because they're your Q group and they give you immediate feedback, and you can pretty much bring anything to them, and you can test out names as well. So we had our kind of, you know, virtual name was Project X for a long time. It's Project X, and everybody's like, oh, Project X, it's so great. And then we're like, well, we have to give it a real name. So this was actually a name that was in our bank for the last, probably, well, it's been about 8 years now. Yeah. And quinta in Portuguese means villa or estate, and it reflects typically wineries there, but then also anything that you're making off of the farm to make that an estate product, which translates to farmstead in the dairy world, in the creamery world. So quinta reflects our heritage on my mom's side. Her maiden name was Ferreira. Her mom passed away 8 years ago. Matter of fact, this time of the year. And so we really wanted to honor her and our Portuguese side of the family with something that was about, once again, it really drew back to the land, the flavors of the land, and all the hard work that we do here. And so quinta also represents, in Spanish and in Italian, it means fifth. And this is the fifth product in our core lineup of cheeses. We have Original Blue, Toma, Bay Blue, Gouda, and now quinta. And so we've got a very diverse workforce here. Besides Polish, we have a lot of Hispanics. And so they are really the ones that make up 65% of our workforce is Hispanics. And we really wanted to honor them as well for all of their hard work and being a part of our family, because we couldn't do it without them. So this is to all those that work hard on the cheese, and our mom, who was such a great inspiration to us. Yeah, she would have loved this cheese too. Believe it or not, she wasn't a big blue cheese fan. Yeah. And now, I mean, blue is our cab because that's what we're known for. But that's what makes this pairing really special, because I probably would not have selected a cab to go with a bloomy rind, soft ripened cheese. But because of the earthy woodsiness that comes from this, and the texture is like custardy, at least ours is right now. If we let this sit, if we let this age another 10 days, it's going to become more runny and very much more spoonable. But right now it's like a custard. It's so like, it's full mouthfeel. It's very luxurious. That the cab is a beautiful pairing with it. Really stands up to it.
It is remarkable when we first went over this cheese and we tried it together
Yeah.
just between us, we had a different. It was 3 weeks ago,
Hmm.
and or 2 weeks ago anyway. And what has changed in this cheese texturally from 2 weeks ago until now is incredible. I mean, there was a little bit of firmness right in the middle. There was a little bit of this custard feeling around the outside, but now, from side to side, or all the way from the edges to the middle of this, is all this beautiful, silky, creamy, just amazing texture. And the influence on that spruce, or from that spruce, has kind of worked its way all the way into the middle, where before it was a little more apparent around the outside, but now the entire cheese has that beautiful nuttiness, woodsy kind of, yeah, so almost smoky quality.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's the interesting thing about this cheese is that it continues to age fairly quick. You know, we anticipating having on the marketplace at 30-ish days, and then probably the cheese gonna peak at about 70 days. So you only have 40 days to go, and we're gonna have, you know, probably ranges where we're gonna suggest to customer where the cheese is ripe and riper and ripest, and you could make almost like a science study in your home on
Hmm.
home by 3 wheels, and then taste them like 10 days apart, and every time you're gonna taste, you're gonna have a different experience.
Hmm.
I can't believe that you would have the patience to have one of these sitting around for another couple of weeks to see how it might change.
Yeah.
Um, so for you, Kuba,
Uh-huh.
where do you like this cheese? What's your aging preference? I mean, you've tried
So
them at 30, you tried them at 70, but
we
what do
tried
you
it
like?
at 30, we tried them at 70. 30, I find at 30 days, I find the cheese being more lactic, almost kind of kefir-like, yogurt,
Sour cream.
sour cream notes. Still, texture is already fairly broken down, but like you said, the middle might have a little bit more firmness to it. I find the wood being a little bit less smooth and more astringent, and you get more of that, like harsh wood almost. Like it's a little bit sharper. Where like at day 40, the woodiness mellows out and the pace breaks down, and really that's the time when the cheese really starts balancing itself out. And then at day 60, you know, like Lynn said, the texture is starting to keep breaking down, so it's getting softer and softer. And close to 70, 75, you might start tasting possibly some ammonia, which it's kind of a sign of that the cheese is starting to go downhill. Um,
Oh, it's remarkable how much it changes throughout that just short period of time. It must be a challenge to market this, certainly. And speaking of that, where are people able to get this cheese? And your production has got to be pretty small, at least at this point. But
Oh, yeah.
um,
Still available at our farmers market in the Bay Area. So we have it at the Ferry Building in San Francisco on Saturday, as well as Grand Lake in Oakland, and then the San Rafael Civic Center Market on Sundays. And for all those, if there's anybody out there, thank you so much for all your support over the last year or so since you guys have been buying it. We do have it on occasion as we're ramping up. Like Kuba said, we're working on our shelf life with our new packaging. So it's not out in stores yet, but you can always just follow us and see if it's available through our web, through our gift packs. Definitely for the holidays, it'll be out there probably in the next couple months. So we're really excited about it, and it's a great style cheese, and this whole category has grown so much. People are really, interested in something that's got a little bit more depth and flavor, and that's got this really creamy texture. I mean, people always say, "You have a really creamy cheese," and they don't know what they're asking for, but at the same time, this brie style keeps coming up, soft ripened to bloomy. When we talk about bloomy rind, we're talking about the white mold on the outside, the candidum that really contributes to that breakdown and that creaminess. And so it's, yeah, we're excited about it.
yeah,
very, very, very good.
And very different than our aged cheeses. So that's what kind of makes this one a fun one for us.
So unique, and it's so exciting. It is going to be great for around the holidays. I am going to be the hero when I show up with not only just wine, because I always show up with wine, but I'm going to show up with the most amazing cheese that anybody has ever had when I show up to those parties also. So I'm definitely looking forward to that.
Well,
Awesome.
for holidays, I know because it's a winter style cheese, in France and Switzerland, they would bake it. They
Oh,
would,
I've put it in the oven before.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
really.
make like a fondue, whatever, and it's yeah, it could be phenomenal too. So.
Well, I thought our kind of our again our last leg of the three meeting tour was really fun to highlight some of your amazing cheeses. Cuba, it was amazing talking to you. I can't wait until we get together at our winemaker dinner, because I'm such a nerdy geeky guy, and I cannot wait to actually I'd like to do an internship at your place is what I'd like to do.
Okay.
I will. You don't need a robot. I will turn every wheel of cheese and just start over again. And anyway,
We'll do this in exchange.
yeah, that sounds great. But such a highlight here for us with our wines to end with our Cabernet Sauvignon and your new Quinta, the 5th cheese from Farmstead Cheese. I thought all the pairings, the Estate 5 and the Gouda were fantastic. The Malbec, which we only have 27 bottles left of, it goes probably just as quickly as your Quinta, and the Tomarashi were amazing. And then I am excited that Kimberly and I get to finish the rest of this wheel of the Quinta along with the rest of that bottle of Cabernet Sauvignon.
Well, I have to say that I am actually pretty shocked that Quinta, as mild as the cheese it is, was able to stand up to big wine like Cab, and they complement themselves very well.
They did I think that was really, really good together. We were very excited about that when we did our pre-show tasting too. So, so Cuba, you know that you are invited to come to Shadybrook anytime. Lynn, you of course, you and Tech, yes, you have a standing offer. You can always come around. I know that we as a company want to come out and do a little retreat and come hang out with you guys and visit the farm. And we are ready to do a winemaker dinner anytime you guys. I'm sure you and Kimberly will collaborate and we'll get organized.
We'll bring your whole wine club out. That would be awesome.
That would be fantastic. We should have a real. That would be a really fun showing. We have a couple of other ideas that we have been throwing around here because we've had so much fun exploring all of your products. I know Kimberly was talking to you about getting the Gouda on our cheese board, so we'll have that with all of our perfect pairing tastings.
Yeah.
But more importantly, and I think even more cool, we are toying around with doing a little bit more of a high-end food and wine experience where it is only our Shadybrook Estate wines and with 100% Farmstead cheeses. So we'd like to pair the ones that we all put together, and we'll maybe have a little private area or a little separate section where we can kind of just upgrade people to really, really doing some intimate cheese and wine pairings.
Fantastic.
So
we'll have to make an extra batch of Quinta for that. So.
Yeah, that would be great. And I can't wait to present it and package it with you guys. I think your presentation of your company is just amazing, and it is really, really, I'm just grateful that we get to collaborate and we get to do some work together.
Thanks. Well, it's very mutual, and we love all the wines, and this has been so much fun. So thank you for inviting us to do these 3 sessions.
Yes.
And hopefully we'll see all of our viewers out here and at Shadybrook, and thank you so much. It was fun.
Cuba, make more cheeses so that we
can... well, you continue doing great job. I'm hoping to snag one of those bottles.
I'll give him one.
Really, really, really cool. Yeah, super, super fun. So,
do we have any questions or anything out there?
The questions out there? No, I think we had a little bit of banter a little earlier, but I think we're all good now. I think everyone they can't put the glass of wine down and they can't stop putting cheese in their mouth. I mean, it's I know I can't.
I know, it almost feels like it's Friday.
Yeah, it is Friday. Why don't we all take tomorrow off?
That's how it always feels, right? When you're drinking, we have such a hard job. Well, thank you so much. Here's to you, Rudy.
Yes, thank you all for joining us out there.
All of you
wine club members and fans of Shadybrook and Farmstead cheese, thanks for joining us for these last 3 sessions. It's been super fun doing this with everybody.